Christianity relies on two immense mysteries, the Trinity and the Incarnation, the paradox of a single person possessing both an infinite and finite nature simultaneously. The early church didn't receive this doctrine in a pristine textbook. They engineered it through controversy theology, arriving at the truth by systematically rejecting structural failures. This blueprint maps the two vectors of Christology. The bottom-up vector is built on continuity, beginning with the human Jesus and viewing the divine as an infusion into consciousness. The top-down vector relies on discontinuity, mapping the eternal Word's invasion into the natural order. The Apostle Paul, the Gospel of John, and the early church universally adopted the top-down starting point. The bottom-up method emerged much later, arising directly from 18th century Enlightenment thinking. The vector you choose dictates your result. Start from the bottom, and you calculate a supreme human moralist. Start from the top, and you arrive at the incarnate creator. To observe the mechanical failure of the continuity model, we can examine the 20th century. German Protestant liberalism heavily emphasized immanence, the idea that the divine is found naturally within human systems. This erased the rigid boundary between God and the created order. The theological collapse was absolute. Highly educated theologians merged political power with religion, identifying the Third Reich and German nationalism as the kingdom of God. The Swiss theologian Karl Barth recognized the total failure of this liberal system. He rejected the theology of continuity, turning to what he called the strange world of the Bible, enforcing a sharp discontinuity between human cultural achievement and divine revelation. While Barth's own theological architecture had structural flaws, his strict refusal to build a Christology from below allowed him to draft the Barmen Declaration, successfully condemning the cultural idols of his day. When you trace Jesus as a continuous product of human progression, you construct a puppet for the prevailing political culture. A resilient orthodoxy requires a starting point strictly from above. This animated diagram maps the parameter space the early church engineered to protect the biblical data. The right boundary wall represents absolute deity. The first catastrophic failure of this parameter was Ebionism. Originating as a first-century Jewish sect, Ebionism simply eliminated the divine requirement entirely, classifying Jesus strictly as a human being. Arianism presented a much more sophisticated failure from inside the church. Arian logic affirmed that the Son pre-existed his early life, but it categorized him as the first created being, rather than eternally equal in substance to the Father. The theologian Athanasius spent his life enduring 5 separate exiles, defending the strict boundary of absolute deity against the Arian model. He applied a rigid soteriological test. If Christ is not fully God, the mechanism of salvation fails. Atonement requires divine capacity. The divine parameter operates as an absolute binary. Yielding even a fraction of Christ's divinity collapses the entire structural integrity of salvation. On the opposite side of the equation sits the requirement of a physical incarnation, locked in here as absolute humanity. The frontal attack on this parameter came from Docetism. Rooted in 2nd century Gnosticism, Docetism proposed that Christ only appeared to have physical flesh. They defined him as a phantom, a deity who merely strode slightly above the earth. This system fails because atonement demands substitution. One of our own human race had to suffer and die physically in our place. Apollinarianism introduced a much more subtle error, a partial incarnation. This model suggested the divine word took a physical human body, but entirely replaced the human animating principle, the human mind or soul. Orthodoxy rejected this using the Cappadocian axiom, what is not assumed cannot be healed. To redeem human nature entirely, both body and soul, the incarnate Son had to assume a complete, unfragmented human nature. The left wall must remain completely solid. With both exterior walls secured, the most difficult engineering challenge remained, defining the precise center point where these two natures interact. Nestorianism broke the center tension by fracturing the subject. It effectively divided Christ into 2 distinct persons, a human and a divine, functioning side by side, but lacking a true substantial union. Eutychianism, also known as monophysitism, presented the exact opposite failure. It attempted to resolve the tension by blending the 2 natures into a single hybrid nature, producing a subject that was neither fully divine nor fully human, but a new mixture. The orthodox requirement is unipersonality. Jesus Christ is exactly one person holding two distinct natures, forever unmixed but completely undivided. If you ease the tension by separating the persons, or blur the tension by blending the natures, you dismantle the structural bridge between God and humanity. We must also track how this unified person functioned across time. This timeline divides Christ's existence on earth into two distinct states, humiliation and exaltation. Modern evangelicalism frequently struggles with an error called practical kenoticism. Kenoticism assumes that to become truly human, Christ emptied himself of specific divine attributes, divesting himself of omniscience or omnipotence. The systematic correction is the doctrine of the two states. Notice that the point retains both colors perfectly throughout the entire timeline. During his state of humiliation, from conception to burial, Christ possessed his divine powers in full. He never lost them, he simply yielded the independent use of them, operating strictly under the Father's will. In his state of exaltation, spanning from the resurrection onward, he operates with those full capacities unbracketed. The core identity of the person remains constant, only the state of his existence shifts. This complete parameter space brings us to the Council of Chalcedon in 451 AD. The council did not attempt to mathematically erase the mystery of the Incarnation. They knew the paradox remained. The utility of Chalcedon was its rigorous elimination of systemic errors. It securely engineered out the logical failures that would have collapsed the gospel. Systematic theology separates these elements, deity from humanity, the person from the work, so we can map them accurately. But the final task is always to integrate them back into a unified whole. True Christian orthodoxy does not dissolve the paradox. Instead, it constructs impenetrable boundaries.